So, on this episode of the Leadersmith podcast, I have a real treat for you. I have a creative genius, a creative artist who will be helping us understand how he sees the world and how he can help you see the world and your business more effectively. Stay tuned.
You are listening to The Leadersmith, Darren Gerdes.
Okay, so in this episode, I have Randy with me. Randy is the creative genius behind the visual brand. He's a brand strategist, creative director with over 25 years in marketing and innovation. Randy has worked as a corporate facilitator, consumer insights specialist, and creative strategist, played a key role in all kinds of marketing innovations. Tell us first, what is a corporate facilitator? What is a consumer insights specialist? What is a creative strategist for people who don't know?
So that's my attempt to say that I'm very right brain, left brain, and it's sort of what we do. So my business, has always been, and my firm has been focused on, as I say, new products and services. Innovation is a word that gets overused, like marketing does sometimes. But it's basically when somebody wants to do something really new, and that doesn't mean just create another flavor of something that exists or extend something that they're already doing. And so because of that, we have to use a right brain and a left brain. Sometimes we have to literally go back to saying, what is it? Who wants it? What's the vocabulary to talk about it? And does anybody want it, right? And so that's the sort of the strategic part of it. And so that's where the insight specialist and the strategist comes in. And also creative strategy is actually something that's really baked into my studio. And I have a team that just does that. And those are the people that not only are good writers, but really help translate strategy to creative expression. Because one of the biggest issues that creative people have is being able to get direction they can do something with. And so I say, not to be said, okay, make this thing red, okay? Because red is what the client wants. More said, make it romantic, because we are, this is a brand that's all about romance and blah, blah, blah. So that's a key role for the creative strategist. So I say, the creative strategist both helps our team and also helps our team also, communicate to the clients.
Yeah, so it sounds like you have a lot of translation to do in the process, right? My job's a lot easier. It seems like there's a lot that goes into this creative process. Now, I was struck. This is how we connected. Was after one of my podcasts, somebody said, "Hey, you ought to meet Randy Herbertson." I said, "Who's that?" Because I just didn't know. And then I looked up your site and I was just intrigued. I mean, I was like, wow, that's really interesting. So what I'm going to do is, and I know that this is a podcast and I have it both visually, I have it on YouTube and as well as on audio. If you're listening on audio, I'm going to try to describe it, but this is really an episode where you want to go to YouTube and you want to see things, because I'm going to show a number of his pieces and we'll talk about why and how he did this. So I'm going to share my screen here and you'll be able to see what it is that I'm looking at. You should be, do you see your first piece here, a change? Yep. Okay. Yeah. So, and when I look at this, I thought, wow, there's just something that spoke to me with each of these pieces. And we're going to talk about a dozen of them, and then we'll talk about why you went down this path. But there's an open door, and the open door goes not to like the neighborhood, but almost to like something ethereal, to heaven or something. It says a change can do good. And then he has, like, with each one, he has a little summary about it. And some are longer than others, but he kept them very short. So tell me what you're trying to express here, or what this means.
So just a quick background. So we're looking at things that are actually on my blog moving forward. And the short story for that was my early COVID project that came out of a social media post that I was asked to take down because it got a lot of traffic. And so I ended up creating a blog, which is now in lots of places in social media as well.
Wait a second. You were asked to take it down because it got so much traffic?
Yes. So I posted this actually. So creative people love Pinterest because it's got a great visual search engine. So I was on Pinterest, had a particular thought, and I put something up. It got 60,000 hits in a day. And I literally got an email from Pinterest saying, please take this down because you don't have it attributed anywhere. They like to have linked out to somewhere. So, and I said, okay, I'll do it to my studio. And they said, no, that doesn't work. So I had to create a blog that was contextual. And then from there, I posted ever since. And, there are months when I get 1 million views. And sometimes, I think it's like 350 right now, but it's been a fun project. But really what it does follow, which is very much besides this whole blog is really about being topical without being political, but it really follows sort of my mantra from a creative standpoint, which is two things. Number one, the visual and the text should absolutely speak together. Number two, they should lead you, but not make all the decisions for you. So, for example, just even the headline here, a change can do good. I was very careful to use as few words as possible. Okay, it doesn't say a change can do you good. It says change can do good. So you got to be open to interpret that sort of double entendre. I also love the fact that it does also follow. It added to people heard of it with a twist, which is also a great way to create memorability. And then the visual really is designed to metaphorically speak to just that. So, you think of all, you think of semiotics, which we also think a lot about here. Skies and points of light certainly speak to goodness, whether it is, religious or otherwise. And the open door too is about change and new opportunities. And really, this also, the other big theme that I thought a lot about over the past year and a half follows my sort of stoic point of view, which is what's the upside, right? What is the glass half full, not the glass half empty? What have we learned in a good way out of a lot of difficulty? And I think a lot of that has happened. So that's really what this is all about.
Yeah, as you were talking, everything that you said made sense, but there was such a level of depth of why you did every little piece of this. And I had like a dozen questions that came as you were talking. So when you're talking about the words or you're trying to lead them without actually giving the answers, I'm thinking, oh, it's kind of like the Socratic method, and you were already onto something else by the time I got that one thought going of the colors or the picture or the matching the picture to the text or what. I mean, there's such expertise that went into these. That's perhaps why this grabbed me so deeply. Like I felt something when I saw each of these, and I think that's probably what you're going for.
Exactly. Like they always say, emotional connection is this. Rational connection is important. Emotional connection lasts, basically.
Wow.
And even just little silly creative things. The tonality of this whole piece, even though it's dark, has a level of warmth to it as well. Throughout that whole, even the gray is a very warm gray. So that was very purposeful. The words themselves are actually being lit by the light of the door. So that's how it all sort of connects together, which is another thing I also always try to do, is to make sure that where I do have text on an image, that it actually becomes part of the image. It's not just something that's slapped on top.
Wow, I am building more dendrites per minute than I have in almost every other interview. This is just fascinating. Okay, next one. I love the image here. There's a chain that is broken and it becomes the very beginning of, and it turns into doves, and it just says one word: hope. There's a sky, there's a sun in the background. I have goosebumps right now looking at the picture. I don't know why. I just do. So tell us about that.
So this one was interesting. So this happened right about when COVID was really starting to buckle down. Okay, when we're really getting scared, when everybody was going home, didn't know where things would happen, no vaccine in sight yet, and so really this again is the same things that don't despair. Don't despair that we are kind of chained right now to our current situation, and we're all living in some fear or concern or unknown, but there is hope. Because again, it's the same thing. Out of bad things come good. The same thing. Out of change becomes a dove. So this is back to that overall theme that you can from adversity turn it into something wonderful. And again, the most hope was the word, just because it's most simple, because we don't know what it is yet, but have hope there will be something. And just like in anything we do, when we actually have the confidence we can do something, we often get it done, right? Because we have the confidence there's a way there. We don't know what the way is yet, but we don't lose hope that we can't get it done.
So now let's back up. And you mentioned earlier, and I know the background a little bit, but you were talking about your COVID project. So, and you so tell us about the origin of doing this kind of medium of what you were doing. Cause this is like this weird, it's different than anything. It's not a blog. It's not just a picture. It's like this little mini blog, and you started it as COVID began. Is that the background?
Yep. So actually, if you click to read more, you actually go to my blog. And I will tell you, my blog has no more than 2 sentences. So this has just a headline, because I think that's where, or actually this is just the one page. But but that's sort of my same thing. I don't, the traditional blog has a couple paragraphs at least, and sometimes more. And I always find when I read a blog like that, I'm drawn to something in it. There's a piece in it that I'm drawn to. And so that's the piece I want to drill down into. That little piece, that is that one piece, that's the only thing I really want people to take away. It's the same reason I've got a whole couple of things I've thought about a lot that I said, oh, this could be a book. And the reality is, nah, it's better as an article. I don't need to write a whole book about something just to keep telling you what I've told you. So it's the same point of view here.
That's really interesting. And so it strikes me that this is like the Pareto principle. You're maximizing that 20%, and just casting off the rest. And maybe that's why it packs such a powerful punch. The visual images are stunning, but then there's not like a lot else there. It just packs a huge punch right away. Okay, let me go to the next one. The next one is, and you already referenced the glass half full, and you have 3 glasses, and it says, what is your next normal? And there's an empty glass, a half full glass, and a totally full glass. And that spoke to me. Again, I cherry picked a dozen of these because I was like, hey, these are the ones that really grabbed me. And it didn't take, I mean, some of them I was like, oh, that's interesting. And some were like, whoa, that's cool. Yeah. So tell me about this. What were you saying here?
So interesting here. I had a client that's actually in the healthcare industry, who actually said in a meeting, said this thing, what's our next normal? And that just struck me. And I thought, oh, that's something I'm going to write about. Next normal means that it's not going to be the same as our current normal. And by the way, it never is. Even without a pandemic year, one year to the next, something changes. It's going to be different. It's going to be normal again. So the whole decision is being conscious about that, and being conscious about not just, oh, it's going to be something, I'm going to roll the punches or I'm going to suffer, really making decisions of, so what did I go through that's going to help me do what I do next? I tell actually people I mentor all the time, even a bad job, you learn good things out of. So you may have an awful experience in a career, and there's something probably came out of that. Not just, I don't ever want to work there again. You're going to learn something about yourself, that how you came through adversity and did something different that worked. So it's the same thing here.
That's right. In my line of work, it's like you learn the most from a bad boss, like what at least what not to do. Right. Right. Okay. Next. Risen, and it has this imagery, and this was around Easter, the brightness of the light, the what looks like the Christ's tomb or a stone rolled away or something along those lines. And this one was a very long one. You cut and pasted a sermon, I think, from someone that really spoke to you, and I went and read that. But just the imagery itself, just I don't. Why is the imagery so powerful? I mean, it just is so. I don't know. It just speaks.
Well, again, yes, I'm a good Anglican choir boy. So yes, this was my Easter post without getting overly religious. But again, I did feel it spoke to sort of a universal truth. And obviously at that time, interestingly, a lot of major religions around the world celebrate something in that season. And it was a time we really needed it too. And that was actually, you think back, that was the time when nothing was happening anywhere. Not literally meetings, so churches were meeting, everybody was doing everything on Zoom. And so the reality is though, but the season was still there. So we had to figure out a way to still say, hey, we're not doing what we did before, but let's not be any less, hopeful and joyous that the season is here. And that's be thankful for it.
Yeah. Is there anything about the color or how you said it, or, I mean, that the thing about this, the reason I selected this one was not because, and I'm a Christian, right? But it's not because of that. It's just because it was powerful, and I don't understand why, but it just was powerful.
So again, one of these things that this particular thing did, if you notice the way the light comes on the rock to the right and to the left, a lot of images like this, you still see this crisp outline of light in the background. But the light actually penetrates the rock and goes beyond it and pushes beyond it. So that was a really specific choice for that, and because it actually made it feel that it was all encompassing. So it's a very exposed image, but it actually allows us to feel it. So that light basically has a light. It's not just like, oh, there's a white background. That light is coming at you and starting to envelope in front of us. So that was how I worked
Yeah.
out.
So a picture speaks 1,000 words, but you were explaining what those words are, where I didn't have the vocabulary to explain why it was so potent to me. Okay, this one was also just I love this one. I I keep saying I love this one, right? Be calm, act wisely, be patient, and it shows a little, I don't know what kind of, I guess a weed or something pushing up through the concrete. And it says pessimism won't win. We can persevere if we act as survivors. And it just, particularly in COVID, and now, so we're just coming out of COVID, and I only stumbled on this like a month ago or so, something along those lines. So I recognize that you were writing in that time, but even now, even while things are getting better, I really appreciate the sentiment that of this little weed or plant or whatever just pushing up through the concrete.
So again, same theme about the fact that, even the very fragile can survive and through adversity. This is actually one of my most followed posts. There's a
Right?
couple that actually still get consistently really, really strong traffic, and this is one. And again, this of course comes up the adage we've all said, be calm and carry on, that whole thing. And so it follows that sort of formula. However, again, these were things, again, early in COVID, I felt it was important. Don't panic, don't move irrationally, and really importantly, don't be impatient, because we can't make this stop tomorrow. People kept saying, oh, well, in a month we'll be doing that. Oh, 3 weeks we're going to be doing it. And of course, never that happened. So I said, don't wallow, but be patient, and use this time carefully. There were people just literally waiting on their, pins and needles for things to happen. So that was the point of this. But again, yeah, this one is really probably one of my most followed posts.
Yeah. So as you said, one of your most followed posts, it made me think, so why do you put these out here? So you put some on your blog. It's not just to be an artist, I would
Right.
imagine. I mean, like you put this out, like this is a marketing piece for you, right? I mean,
Well, truthfully, yeah, I guess it probably is. I do put it up on LinkedIn too, and I get some, one of the interesting things, it's on LinkedIn, it's done to draw. In other words, it's not like I have to just write something and say, hey, how are you? People will see this because it goes out to my full, LinkedIn audience and write me and say, wow, that spoke to me, and a conversation will start because of that, which is great. It's a great way to start a conversation. But yeah, I actually, to be truthful, this is it's a great experience for me. It doesn't take me a huge amount of time. In fact, I usually do it on a weekend, and it takes me an hour, sometimes a little longer if I'm really fussing with the image. But the point is, it's something that I think about all week, and I sort of collect things. I write myself notes, and then it comes together, and I sort of say, this is it. There's every once in a while, actually, I'll write two and save one and schedule it later, but usually it's just one.
so I asked that, and I was going to ask this question later, but this is just a different encapsulation of the creative process. So there are people that are listening right now that want to start a blog, but they, oh, I don't know if I have anything to say, or no, what he just said is how it works. You think about the thing over the week, and then it starts to formulate, and you start to see things everywhere that come together as you're thinking about your blog post for that week, or they want to do a podcast, and the same thing. And you just get, it's the same creative process. He just did this in this visual medium. That's really interesting. I was thinking about sending out a 1 minute mailing about leadership, right? Everything I do is, I'm a professor, a management professor. I built a leadership program. Everything I do is about leadership. And so I surveyed people and asked them, well, would this be interesting? Why would this be useful? If I keep it to under a minute each post, and then I'd have to compete with myself to make sure that I keep it under a minute and deliver what I say, and that it's got enough potent, powerful, useful content that they want to come back and open it the next time.
Right.
So it was very parallel to what you're doing with this, very word, light on words, very clear, very crisp. It was parallel in that way. But when I did my blog, when I did my podcast over time, I found that what you just described, the process was the same. So if you've been thinking about, I want to start a blog or a podcast or something, go do it. And then you'll see that you're going to experience the very process that he just described, where you're thinking about it, it's on the back burner, you start to see things come into focus, and then wham, you have something. And that will speak to certain people. It won't speak to everybody, but it'll speak to certain people, and that's who you'll attract. Okay, at any rate, I was going to talk about that process later, but this was just
that's 100% right. The other thing I would just add to that, Darren, is that don't feel chained or chored by your blog. In other words, don't feel like if you just can't do it one week or you don't have time, you don't. Okay, I've skipped a week because I just didn't have the time to do it, and it should be a pleasure. It should be something that you're doing that you're kind of looking forward to, that you're thinking about, and when you're ready to do it, you're just sort of you feel good about it. Because as soon as something like this becomes a chore or a task, then it's not worth doing.
That's right. It should be a labor of love, and it should help you grow and expand you and help you think and become more and add to your catalog, whatever that is. And right. Okay. Next one. Here we go. I love the visual here. It says, does the end do the ends justify the means? And it has a guy kicking over a small block, which is kicking over a larger block and a larger block and a larger block. And when you get to the end, that huge block is going to crush the guy on the other end.
Right.
Tell me.
So this one really, again, came at a time when we were getting sort of what we call the group hysteria happening, where people realize even that, a small voice turns into a bigger voice and it becomes destructive. And so that was really what this one was about, was the fact that even think that, oh, I don't make a difference. So if I say something, it doesn't matter. It's the opposite of people saying, oh, my vote doesn't matter. The truth is one voice does matter. And that can start a catalyst to something. So it should be something that makes sense, that it is a positive thing rather than a negative thing. Just the same thing when someone says something, people say, oh, you said something that really bothered me 3 years ago and I've never gotten over it. So it's being really mindful about anything you do is, do the ends justify the means? You may have felt good in the moment you said something because you want to get off your chest, but did it really, really serve any purpose beyond that?
So they call this, where we're putting this stuff on social media. A better term might be uncivil media. I mean, it seems like that's how that works. Like people come out of the woodwork to criticize like that, would never say anything to your face. And it's fascinating to see how that works. Let me ask you one more question as we're on this. It strikes me that while this was set in a time where, everybody was kind of at each other and, it seems like art, tell me if I'm wrong, like art's like kind of a U2 lyric where you can read whatever you want into it and it can still meaningfully speak to you. Right. The intent of the artist isn't the end all of the picture. It's like your experience coming into and playing and having a conversation with whatever you put together. Is that fair?
100% right. It's open for your interpretation. And that's completely the point. And that's just why I like using metaphorical visuals, because people will take them in different ways.
Yeah.
And so come to their own conclusions. But the most important thing is that you'll ask yourself a question, hopefully, and think about it. So what does this mean to me? How does this apply to me, to what I do? And so I'm not trying to preach to people. I'm not trying to tell them to do something. I'm just trying to get them to think. That's the whole point. So it gets me to think.
So when I'm looking at this through my lens as a management professor, I'm seeing the boss on the left and the poor employee that's about to be crushed by the chain of events that he's kicking over. Whether he knows that that's going to happen or not that's other people will see it differently, but that's how I experience it. So we're having this weird conversation with your art and my thinking. And okay. At any rate,
that's perfect.
Yeah. Okay. Next one. What is your essential? And it has a monarch butterfly that the butterfly wings are separating, and the I don't know what that is. The body of the center body of the thing is just taking off like a rocket. Yeah. I just thought that was so cool. I don't know how do you illustrate something like that? Like, how do you create that?
So a lot of this is composited from other things, and I just sort of have an idea and I'll put it together. That was literally a composite of a couple different images that I just sort of thought about. But and truthfully, I will tell you the way I'm always doing this is that I write first and visualize second. And because because the words usually then and then as I'm thinking about it, it sort of comes to me. And again, I'll look at other things that are out there, and something will strike me that will speak to it. But again, the whole point is I want it to be something that's powerful in some way, and sometimes powerful in its minimalism, but powerful in some way that actually will create people's get their attention, and then actually make them go, huh, okay, so what is that doing, and what does that mean to me? And again, it's the back thing about tying it into the to the words as well. And this one actually was so powerful, I didn't even put any words on the image itself. I just said that's already speaking a lot.
Yeah, I like the phrase that you just used, powerful in its minimalism. I think sometimes we try too hard, and
Right.
in trying too hard, we water down whatever our main message is. And that could be in a blog, that could be in a podcast, whatever it is. So yeah, that's it, but it just spoke to me, like what's your core, what's your big idea, that kind of thing. Okay, is your bias constructive or hurtful? And it has the I don't even know, like the judge's scales, and somebody has a balloon that's kind of pushing up the scale on one side, so it's no longer even. And I just, again, this was just powerful. It's a visceral picture. I get it. I don't know how to describe it exactly, but I can see, yeah, bias has an effect on the scales of justice. I can see that, and I can feel it, even if I can't quite describe it.
Right. So this happened about the time of all the George Floyd stuff happening. Which again, I was, obviously, on top of the pandemic, we had all that come to the surface. And the same thing, as much as I didn't want to preach to people about my point of view, I wanted people to think about theirs. I mean, what was really something really powerful to me, we all sat through a lot of, DEI discussions after that point, in every Zoom call and stuff like that. And I was really struck by a woman who was, a Colombian woman I was sitting on a board with me with small kids. And she said something that really, really stuck with me. And she says, you know what? It's not just that you look at it. I just realized that there are things that I do every day that are biased, that I don't even think about, that are just sort of part of my norm. I don't pay attention. I'm not conscious of them. And so I can say, oh, I'm not a prejudiced person. I don't, but I do, and it was really, really struck me, because we all realize, oh, I'm not that person. But there's things ingrained in what we do personally that are. And so just being conscious of them and trying to change those, and and I think that's through all the DEI discussions that have happened throughout the months. Those are the things that really stuck with me.
So I think one of the things that was interesting was that it wasn't somebody weighing down the scale. It was a balloon pushing up the scale, like a helium balloon the person's hanging on to, and it's pushing up the scale. Was there a conscious choice of why?
Yeah. So this is back to my glass half full moving forward idea, is that the right point of view can be constructive. So bias isn't necessarily by itself a negative word. Okay. So that's one of those things that we, from our language turn things into one way or another. It isn't necessarily. So it can be constructive, right? So that's, again, back to thinking, I never thought about that. That's the whole point of doing that. You say you're biased. Okay. Is that maybe I am, and they say it from a negative standpoint, but maybe that I'm biased in a good way. I'm biased, for instance, towards buying things that are sustainable. Okay. I absolutely biased. I will choose something that's sustainable over not purposely. I'm biased for that. Okay. I'm not saying if you're not that, well, I will say that's probably wrong, but it's not that, but that is my bias. So, I just using what we use in the English language or in any language, and realizing there's always two sides to it.
I feel so dumb because I understood it, but I couldn't explain it. I think that's probably true for a lot of people, where they see it, or they can get this and they understand it, but I don't know that I could have explained what you just said with the balloon image. But I got it. It resonated with me for some reason. Okay, here's the next one: resilience, and it has a wrecking ball smashing into a human brain, just the human brain, just like the weird, I don't even know how to describe it, just got
cerebellum.
the kind of, yeah, cerebellum, right? and it's just smashing into it, and it says resilience. Tell me about that.
So this one was a fun one. Yeah. So this was the sort of idea is that we were getting bombarded, right, with all sorts of things that wanted to bring us down. And this was a time when there was a lot of press about people are suicides going up, people are in despair, and basically what really is that they're listening to the news all day long. And what are the numbers? What are the numbers? Da, da, da. And so it's really I said, we're controlled by our brains. So if we are resilient, we're stronger than things that are coming at us if we use conscious thought and don't just let it take us down. Because again, I know, and we all know, so many people who are literally frozen in fear and in the sort of maniacal way of just simply watching numbers, and listening to everything everybody said that was negative, that was fearful. And so that was the point of that.
I think we were in that place for months on end, just feeling that, like, it's almost like, so I'm not sure where you live exactly. I live in South Carolina, and so we get hurricanes periodically. And when a hurricane comes, it's all this hurry up and wait motion. Like, I have to get everything out of the yard. I got to get the garage clean so I can get a car in the garage. I have to do all that stuff, and then I'm just kind of glued to the TV, like, what's about to happen? Is it a cat 3 or is it going up to a cat 4 or down to a cat 2? What's going on? Do I need to get out of town? And I just feel stuck. And I felt stuck in 2020 for months. And so I guess that's why this just really spoke so eloquently with only one word.
Yeah. Thank you. And again, that's sort of the point, is that, we all, well, I hope to think that I didn't waste a lot of time. It's always good to waste a little bit of time, by the way. We all should waste a little time every week, because it's important to waste some time. But I think a lot of us wasted a lot of time just because we weren't on the grind of our schedule. We were saying we were worried, etc. Is to just be resilient and use your time. And that's the thing. We've heard of so many wonderful stories of people who did something they would never have done because all of a sudden they had a situation where they weren't commuting or whatever, and they could do it. And that's the part that we, feel good about it. And like I said, it doesn't have to be a big thing. It could be like, oh, I became a master chef, during COVID. I don't have to be that extensive. It could be like, hey, I started to read books again. Great. There's something that you could say you did.
Yeah. Okay. So next one. Again, maybe this is my management background, but it just spoke to me. It has, I guess, there's a little figure of a man climbing what looks like stairs. There are pieces on the bottom, like he's created the stairs out of these little wood chips, and it doesn't go anywhere. Like, are you gonna add another stair, or is it gonna fall apart? What is it? It says a year of recalibration. So talk to me about this one.
So this was back to the theme of saying that we are going to come out of this and adapt and do things in a new way, a positive way. And part of that, and this, my favorite, was the create a don't list. And again, I read that somewhere that stuck with me, and I said I'd include that as part of it. So we all create the to-do list, but what are we going to stop doing? What are we going to stop doing that we probably should not do or shouldn't do? And that's just like, if we're, as Christian's saying, during Lent, we're going to give up, drinking. It's creating things consciously that we don't really need to do anymore, or that we shouldn't do anymore. And they can be small things, they can be big things. But I think this, again, was the perfect example, and I think smart people did this, is use this time to think, okay, how am I going to change? Maybe I hate what I'm doing, I'm going to do something different. Maybe I love what I'm doing, and I'm going to re-engage with it. One of the quick things that I talk a lot about with our client base is I sort of put them in 3 categories. We have the clients that basically just put their head in the sand and said, wake me when it's over. And we didn't hear from them for an entire year, and they just froze, right? There was the second group who got insanely busy because whatever they did was very important in COVID. And so, or became important because people had time. We have a client in the sewing business, and their business tripled. And so they just got really, really busy. And as a result, they had to start doing new things because they were out of the old things, right? So they had to come up with new things. And the third group, which was my favorite, the group said, you know what? We're a little slower right now. So let's use this time to do the things we keep saying we don't have time to do. Let's start working on new products, new ideas, new service things. Let's use this time really well. Because you know what? Our business is slow in these other areas. And so let's do this and really plan for a future. And of course, that's the group that's coming out of it smelling like a rose, right? Because they've pipelined things and things have gotten moving and they've really used that time to make things productive. The first group, which is waking up now, is like going, oh my God, I lost a year. I've got to make up for a year. I got to compare myself to 2018, you know? So it was the exceptional opportunity we had.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And as you were talking about the don't do list, Brian Tracy talks about if you have priorities, you by default have posteriorities, and you need to understand the world that way. And that phrase made so much sense to me in the same way that the pictures make sense to me. I mean, it just, oh yeah, I get it. And it's, yeah. Okay, let's move on to the next one. Winning is not uniting, and it has two hands, one on top of the other. And this one just spoke again viscerally because, like, yeah, even if I win, I lose. Like Dale Carnegie talks about, like, don't win an argument, right? Because if you win, you lose. So I think that's where you're going, but you tell me what you were saying with this.
So this of course is now moving into election time period, or closer to it, or heading that direction. And it really, it's the reality is, it's no matter what side you're on, there's always some desire to win, to be the victor, right? But is that really a victory? You know, like I said, if there is a future, if someone wins, someone loses, and someone's not going to be happy, someone's going to try to disrupt and try to make a change. And so we waste a lot of time with the whole thought of winning versus what is, and it's not even the word compromise. It's, you know, although it is compromise, it's finding that unified point. So like in any argument, there's something we all agree on, right? So how can we take that piece we agree on and build on it rather than focus on the things we don't agree on? And truthfully, you know, I think positive signs of some things like that happening right now in various places, and some that are not. And by the way, it's not saying, oh, it's the progressives, oh, it's the libertarians, whatever. It's a little bit of everybody, right? And so the whole point gets me is building from the middle, basically, which doesn't mean where we compromise, means what do we all agree on first, and then let's build up from there.
Yeah, that's really interesting, and you could kind of, what you just described, you could kind of feel in the picture. Okay, I have two more. I told you I had a dozen. I had a baker's dozen, so there's actually 13 here. What is your USP? Now I know what a USP is, and it has these cogs and all these interrelated cogs, and one of the cogs is a golden cog, and it just spoke to me because again, in my world, this, you know, cog in a machine kind of thing, nobody wants to feel like that, and so it's just, I could feel something here, and I like the idea. I know what a USP is. And I understand you should focus on that thing that you are. Like, we probably don't want to trade places. I don't know how you would be as a management professor, but I know how I would be doing what you're doing, and I would be terrible. So you have certain skills that are just, they're golden. I don't have those. I don't possess those. So talk to me about this picture.
So I would tell you that, and I actually have a little thing that I've written about, like I said, what's your creative DNA? I think everybody has that in them. So I think where some people can actually do it in a certain way, everybody does it in some way. And that's sort of the point of this, is that everybody has a unique position in the world, right? And it's the combination of your skills and experiences, and how those come together, like I said, are golden, because they're you, all right? And so people spend a lot of time trying to say either, oh, I'm not like so-and-so, I can't do that, I'm going to be self-depreciating, or I do this instead. And that's sort of the point of this, is that everybody has that. And it's funny because I talk about this a lot as I'm putting together my team for my studio. I really look for not just diversity from a DEI standpoint, diversity the way people's brains think, you know, and because I think it's the old classic, you know, 1 + 1 equals 3, you know, is that people who have a certain way of looking at a problem, and people look at a different way at a problem, will come together if they're conscious of the fact they have a different way they think about a problem, together with a whole new solution. So one person's big picture, one person's detail oriented. Perfect. The big picture person will inspire the detail oriented person and they'll all come together if they're conscious that they're different in the way they're approached the situation.
But knowing yourself is the core component to that. Like you have to know what, like I can talk. I have no problem with that, but I couldn't do the art kind of thing. That's just not me. But I know what my USP is, and I'm not trying to stray from that. I'm not trying to be you. Okay. This is my absolute favorite. This is the one, this next one that I'm about to show you. This is the last one, and it's the one that made me go, I got to talk to this guy. Okay. This was great. And you'll understand why when my background as a management professor. It says what makes an enduring leader, and it has about a half dozen pawns, and because of the camera's angle, you see a crown in the shadow. And I just thought, I have goosebumps talking about it right now. Right. I mean, there's just something so right about that when you empower, when you see people, when you see the value that's there, as opposed to seeing them as pawns. So tell me about what you were thinking with this.
So this was building off of, again, something that has always been one of my favorite explanations, which is the description of the extrinsic versus the intrinsic leader. The extrinsic leader leads by force. The intrinsic leader leads by inspiration, right? And so the class, they say, it's Hitler and Jesus, right? Who had the more enduring long-term impact on the world. So that's really what this is about, is that you can lead by force or direction, be authoritarian in the way you do things and say, because it's my way or the highway, or if you don't do this, something punitive is going to happen, versus saying, you know what, you make your decision. This is the way I believe in, the way I'm going to go forward. Are you coming with me? And the truth is, those kinds of leaders are the leaders that endure. The leaders that, and it's not just about creating a legacy, but create a much more powerful impact in the world. And obviously, and that also comes because the power doesn't come from the individual. The power comes from everybody together that make that the movement. And so I agree. This image, which I found, is it just spoke to that perfectly. And it also did it in sort of a natural way. It did because exactly like you said, this is not a composite. This is absolutely what happened with the shadow of those pawns. It turned into the crown. So
it just, wow, like you see the value that's really in there. Wow. Okay. So I'm going to stop sharing at this point, and I want you to tell us like what it is that you do. Like, so beyond creating these images, like your day job, like how do you help your clients? What exactly do you do, and how they can reach you if they're interested in reaching out, connecting, finding out how you can serve them?
So we, the Visual Brand, which is my company, is, like I said, is really, as we call ourselves, if we're being fancy, we say an innovation studio, but I like calling us just a new products and services studio. And what we really do is we work with all different kinds of clients, small ones, big ones, helping them do something new. And that usually means that they either want to get to something that could be the future of the business, or that they're trying to solve something that they've already sort of started to think about, but need to take it to the next level. And our team is very, split, like I said, strategically and creatively. We do a lot of creative work here. Interesting enough, one of our really subspecialties is information design, because that is our firm into itself, doing great information design. Taking something very complex and making it simple. We work in some instances with some engineers who give us these crazy, wacky looking drawings, and we say, how do we turn this into something that whoever you're trying to sell this to, whether it's a consumer or an investor or a government, that they will understand it. So that's really what we do. And like I said, it's funny. We have clients sometimes that are private equity who said, hey, we are buying this company and they don't know, they've got a great idea. They don't know how to, turn it into something that is be consistent and be out there. And we work sometimes with big companies that, like I said, it's funny, in big companies, we often work with the innovation department if that exists, and that usually comes in and out of style. It'll be in style for a while, and then say, oh no, we're not going to do that for a while. We're going to do it. We're going to move that into marketing. So, but again, the smart companies that enduringly are always thinking about what else can we be? What else can we do? And then in last, in some instances, sticking to service areas, we work with companies who know they're on a macro trend. Like we have a client in the utility field who is digitizing utilities. Right? That seems like a simple statement, but it's not. and it involves lots of different things. But no, it's not a small change, not just from an infrastructure standpoint, but from a point of view and an attitude standpoint and a communication standpoint. So that's our charge to work with them that way.
How do people get a hold of you if they want to work with you or understand more of your processes? I'm sure you have a website and contact information.
Sure. So the website is thevisualbrand.com. And I am Randy at thevisualbrand.com. And
All right.
Be happy to hear from anybody.
I appreciate you sharing that. I always end every episode with a quotation for contemplation. And as I was thinking about branding, I came across a quote by Steve Forbes, who said, "Your brand is the single most important investment you can make in your business." And that makes a lot of sense. When you think Steve Forbes, you have a particular picture of what he's all about. Just like when you think of somebody else, when you think of Tim Ferriss, you think of this. When you think of Steve Forbes, you think of that. When you think of Joe Biden, you think of something different than when you think of Trump. So yeah, your brand is important. And yeah, I can't stress that enough. Okay, I always give, or try to always give, the final word to the guests. Anything else that you want to say about anything that we covered here for the audience?
I think the only thing I would say, which is follows my theorem, which is don't look backwards, look forward.
Yeah, that's powerful. Hey man, thanks so much for coming on the show. I really appreciate it. I have learned so much in a short period of time about how and why these things just spoke to me at such a deep level. And I really appreciate your time.
Yeah, likewise, so much. Thank you, Darren.
Thank you.